So, hello everyone and welcome back to another quick video. If you hear some background noise, that's one of the fans that I have running right now. It is very hot in my room. So, sorry if it's a little bit more annoying than usual. Usually I turn them off, but right now it is just too hot to do that. So, what we have in front of us is a picture of the GTX 460 Special Edition that I modified. And I've now made the decision based off progress that I made with the MSI GTX 970 because that GTX 970 let's just say I watched some Louis Rossmann videos and I got inspired, let's say, by his videos because I noticed that sometimes he gets in a MacBook and the only thing broken with it is a PWM controller responsible for one of the voltage rails in that MacBook. And I never really heard of that happening for graphics cards. But I just thought, okay, I'm out of ideas for the 970. I was already suspecting that something's up with the PWM controller. I just thought it was reacting to something else that was broken. But I thought, okay, what the hell, just try it. And I desoldered the PWM controller. And who would have thought? The other VRAMs are back. VCore's obviously not running because I just stole the PWM controller, but the other VRAMs are back up and running. So, right now I'm making the decision either to get a new PWM controller and just hope that the controller was the problem, or I'm just gonna e-power it. And I'm kinda playing with the idea of e-powering it. I'm probably gonna try a new PWM controller, but if it doesn't work out, I'm definitely gonna e-power it. But before I e-power a GTX 970 that doesn't really belong to me, I'm going to e-power something else. Something that's not really worth much, that's not really... like something that can be sacrificed to me learning a new thing. And that's the 460 SE. Because that was the entire point of buying that graphics card. The entire point of getting it was to try things that I don't want to do on my good cards, my cards that I like the PCB of, cards that perform well, cards that just were really expensive. And yeah, so like considering this card cost me $6 and another $6 for shipping, so yeah, the $12 I paid for this, 50% of those were shipping. Yeah, I'm gonna use this card and abuse it. And the thing I'm going to be e-powering it with is this right here. You might remember this. I made a video, or like several videos about this. It's a pretty old thing. This is a GTX 470 reference PCB, and as you can clearly see, let's just say I was let loose. And I did things to this card. It arrived broken. So like it actually ran a bit, but the previous owner, so like short story, the previous owner used thermal adhesive to attach the cooler to the GPU. So like the adhesive you're supposed to use to attach the VRAM heatsinks, and they used that for the GPU core. And I was trying to like get the heatsink off. And I got it off eventually, but I had to use a crap ton of force, and I later discovered that the card had a problem where like the edges of the GPU core were lifted up, so those corners did not have contact, like those had broken BGAs. And if you would put a heatsink down on the card with enough pressure, you would put those back together and the card would work. You just had to use a lot of mounting pressure. And then just after a couple hours, the card just... yeah, it gave out. So after remounting the heatsink a couple times, the card did no longer work, very likely because of those broken BGAs. Yeah, I did keep the heatsink from this. It's now on the GTX 480. But the card itself was basically just a, well, maybe I can steal components off of this, and I did. So like, There's a bunch of stuff missing, especially on the back. You can see I tried to remove the VRAM chips because I was testing how much force you need to forcibly remove them, as you can see by the ripped out traces all over the PCB. And yeah, so there's one, as of now, there's one functional thing left on the card, and that is the V-Core VRAM. So this is going to be our ePower module. So the V-Core VRAM on this, it's not really anything special. It's pretty bad actually, like for powering this, because it's an NVIDIA reference PCB. And NVIDIA reference PCB suck all the way up to the 1080 Ti. But since this is this card uses a GF100 and this is using a GF104, which is much smaller, as you can see. This is actually like, this is still an upgrade. Like look at that VRAM. I made a video about the card. It is so bad, and actually I don't know. I don't know if I actually ever talked about the VRAM capability, because I lacked the datasheets, and then I got the datasheets from someone. Let's just say the VRM of this card can barely handle enough current to run the card stock at 1 volt, and I overvolted this to 1.2 volts. So in pretty much every video I made about this, I said V-Core is gonna blow up. Like, it's set in stone. V-Core is going to blow up eventually. And now it will kinda blow up. Not just in the sense that I'm overloading it, I'm replacing it with this. And yeah, again, this VRM is not really anything special. I also lost the heatsink. So the card came with a custom cooler, and there was like an aluminum block that was like on here with fins, and I searched for it and I couldn't find it. So gonna have to figure something out to cool those MOSFETs. Yeah, I'll figure something out. So yeah, and so the one functioning thing left on the card is the V-Core VRM. And luckily on the back right here, a 12-volt LDO. So most of the times you have cards with low dropout regulators right here. This card luckily does have it on the part that I'm going to keep, because, well, I'm going to cut the card pretty much right here. Well, actually, let's get a little bit more precise, because the V-Core power plane goes right here. Like, this part is the V-Core power plane. You can see where I removed the solar mask. But I don't think I'm actually going to care about this bit a lot, because I did care about it once, but at that point the VRAM was still on it. At some point I broke the inductor, and it's just like, yeah, I don't really care about it anyways, so like, not that big of a deal. What I do care about is V-Core. And so you do have all this power plane right here. You could use the capacitors, I could just hook up to the inductors directly to get my V-Core. Or like on the back there are 3 and 2 more empty pads for tantalum SMD capacitors. I could also just use these. It would also be pretty easy to have a ground there, because I think this small strip right here is ground, but like that's really a slim strip of ground. I think one of these is ground too, but that would be quite inconvenient to hook up. I could maybe use the grounding legs of these capacitors right here. I think for now I'm going to flip the board, so this is going to be the underside that we see right here, and then use the tantalum capacitors on the back to hook up V-Core and ground. Yeah, probably gonna do that. And yeah. So let's say where we're gonna cut the card. I think I would start here. Or like, okay, let's try to preserve as much of this V-Core strip as possible. So it kinda cut it here. You already see I made some things on the card. And then, since we don't really care about the memory traces and also don't care about the VMem VRAM, I would say I could just do something like this. Like, yeah, cut it like this. So we get to keep our VCore strip right here. If I want to hook up like a heavy, big wire, we get to keep this part of ground, which could be useful. Sadly, we're going to keep all this stuff that's just kind of there. And if I cut the card, like I'm going to take a saw and I'm going to, well, saw the back of the card off. This is a multi-layer PCB, you could always end up shorting something. So you're gonna have to sand down, like, yeah, where you cut it. And if I short something of this, which was the PEX rail, I'm going to have to, like, cut it here. Or like, yeah, like, cut it. Like this. And then, I think I could just keep going in a straight line. Because, like, we could even repopulate the VMem VRAM like this, because I do still have the MOSFETs. The controller on the back is still there. We'll just have to replace those MOSFETs and then put an inductor right here. And then have the output of it be the solder point. Like, that's doable. I don't quite know where the controller is on the back, so it might be right here, it might be right here, it might be here-ish, and that would be a problem. So let's just say ideally we wanna screw it. Let's just say we're going to cut here and keep all of that. So we're going to have a little bit of that space hanging off of it, but you can always keep cutting more stuff. And also we're going to keep some, so if we cut right at the edge of the VRAM, we also, like, we improve VRAM temperatures by leaving this part on, because the PCB is mostly made out of copper and also glass fiber. And leaving more copper next to the VRAM is going to improve its temperatures, because the PCB2 acts as a heatsink. So, yeah. And you can already see on the picture, like, I already modified the, what was it, NCP4 something. It's also on the back, kinda. Where is it? I think it's here. Yeah, I think it's kinda there. There's the VCore PWM controller on the back, already attached a potentiometer to it. So, volt mod is already on there. It's just I can't really test the voltage range that. Oh, actually, I could. Yeah, I could be like before. I tried to get the core off several times. I never managed to do it. Yeah, I recently found a heatsink that I just have lying around that fits the card. So I could just use that heatsink, which is also where the thermal paste is from, because I just tested it when I took this photo. Because I wanted to test if it still works. So, yeah. And, yeah, so, that's kind of, yeah, it's a short video. Like, that's just random thought I'm having at 10:30 p.m. right here. So I've decided to try my first e-power on this GTX 460 Special Edition right here. Like, I'm going to keep the memory volt mod I attached to it. I removed all the mods I did to it, other than the memory volt mod, like all the capacitors I attached to it. I removed those because it's, yeah, I didn't use flux to attach those, and like, I could do those mods much better. So I will just remove those capacitors. I'm gonna put them back on eventually once the card is e-powered. But for now, just for having, for better handling, I just remove the capacitors, which, like, they weren't attached that good at anyway. And like, this card is an example. Like, that card has its 5 volt low dropout regulator right here. So if I would cut the card right here, wherever I would do that, like, okay, you can probably power GT1030 with the VRM of this card, and it should be a pretty easy cut if you do like something like this. You get both VRMs, and even the PEX ray, like the PEX ray is here too. But yeah, I want to replace that VRM. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hot air. I'm gonna take all of. I'm gonna take the 3 inductors off. Probably get rid of the MOSFETs if I want to use their ground pad as a hookup point, and then on the back, like here-ish, there's also the PWM controller. I'm also going to desolder that so it can't like complain and say, oh no, the VRM is so freaking weird and we need to power down and it's pulling low the power good signal and everything shuts down, which is the exact problem that the GTX 970 has, that even sparked this idea of e-powering stuff. So yeah, just gonna get rid of the PWM controller. And that's pretty much it. I really don't want to drag it out to 20 minutes again. So yeah, the 470 finally gets a chance to redeem itself by becoming an e-power board. And this card also gets a chance to redeem itself because the Neo VRM, the Neo VRM is, it has an additional phase, and it's also running better MOSFETs than the card is running right now. So yeah, so the new VRM should be good enough to just let the card, to just let it run and go up to ridiculous voltages. And Fermi likes to scale with voltages, pretty high voltages, so this should be a lot of fun if it works out. And yeah, only problem is I'm gonna have to use these 2 power connectors, and then also these 2 power connectors. Maybe, yeah, I could just use a heavy duty wire and like hook up the 12 volts from these hook up 12 volts from and ground from these connectors to the other connectors, and then I don't have to plug the other ones in. That would be doable. Yeah, that would be doable. That would be very doable. Yeah, and that's pretty much the video. Like thoughts on my first e-power project, like taking 2, like a pretty dead and an almost useless card and turning them into something useful. And yeah, so that's the video. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and until we see each other next time, goodbye. I just also want to say that I completely forgot to mention that maybe I'm also going to have to hook up 3.3 volt power supply somewhere, because 3.3 volt only comes from the PCI Express slot, which I'm cutting off. And if some of the components that make up the VCore VRM need 3.3 volts, I'm going to have to use a SATA cable and use a SATA power connector and solder that to the board. And that's how I'm getting my 3.3 volts. So yeah, forgot to mention that. So that's why I'm doing this right now. Okay, that's it. Bye.